To the Supreme Court that will resume hearing the Suo Moto case with regard to a judgment that took place in the Allahabad High Court. This is the judgment that came about on the 17th of March, whereby the judge had observed that dragging a minor, breaking the strings of her pajamas and grabbing her breasts before fleeing the place would not really amount to rape or rape. Now, the top court had stayed that controversial part of the order while calling the observations insensitive and inhumane. Now, let's just go across to my colleague Nupur, who's joining us. Nupur, of course, we are expecting the Supreme Court to take a call in regard to that judgment by the Allahabad High Court, and the Allahabad High Court coming, making these controversial remarks and controversial judgments, and that's really been getting them a lot of flack.
Yes, Divya, in fact, very recently, just last week, we have reported that there was another Allahabad High Court order whereby the judge had made very startling observations with regard to a sexual assault case on women. And he had, in fact, went ahead to say that the women, even if the woman was raped, she was herself responsible as she was mature enough to know the morality and consequences of her actions. Now, today, the Supreme Court will resume hearing this case that you're talking about. Very importantly, the court will also be hearing the lawyers representing the mother of the minor victim here. The mother had also approached the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court took the Suo Moto action on the Allahabad High Court's observations. Previously, the top court has already stayed the controversial parts of the High Court order. Now, the Supreme Court will further be hearing the case and will in fact be directing further action on that order, or if it may also decide to change the directions and whatever the directions were given, because it was a summoning order of two accused in that case, and where the High Court had actually said that this act or preparatory act before fleeing would not amount to attempt to rape or rape, and he had in fact watered down the charges to sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault. Now it will be very important to see that what the Supreme Court says on question of law when it comes to such a case where there was a minor involved, there is POCSO involved, and it will be important to see that what the court has to say with that regard, and also on the mother's plea. Last week only the mother had in fact requested the court to redact her name in the Allahabad High Court order. You can see how problematic that order was, that it even disclosed the victim mother's identity. Last week only the Supreme Court had to intervene and in fact direct the High Court registry to redact her mother's name. Now the top court will again resume hearing the case, and it will be important to see that what the top court has to say about this Allahabad High Court order, and also maybe if it has also taken note of this other order that we had in fact reported just last week.
Right. Of course, Nupur, it is the victim's mother, like you mentioned, along with the organization called Just Rights for Children Alliance, challenging that Allahabad High Court ruling. Take us through what the Supreme Court had said in regard to this matter.
Had made very strong observation. Justice B.R. Gawai, while staying this order, had in fact came down heavily on the Allahabad High Court and had said that the observations in the order were totally insensitive and inhuman, and in fact he went ahead to observe that the judge had in fact, it cannot be said that the order was passed in a rushed manner. The judge had taken considerable amount of time before passing this order, as he had reserved the same order for quite some time. So the Supreme Court in very strong words said that it cannot be said that he has not applied his mind in this order, and had in fact taken a very dim view of the observations made by the Allahabad High Court in this order, which had also in fact triggered massive outrage across the country, if you remember.
Right, of course, so we will keep tracking this story, and of course, the Supreme Court coming down heavily on that insensitive and inhuman remarks made by the Allahabad High Court in regard to this particular case of a minor, and it was finally the mother challenging that ruling that has in fact got the Supreme Court to take up this matter. We will keep tracking that story. Thank you so much, Nupur, for joining us.